brainwashing. Okay, you're saying
Yep.
these people that are experts in brainwashing is using the Department of Education to brainwash our children.
Yes.
What are they after? Why are they doing it?
Well, if you want to move a country from a free individualistic economy,
Which we have.
yes, or had,
Okay.
to a planned economy, you have to do it through the schools. You have to dumb down and brainwash, change the attitudes and values. You have to completely, social engineering has to go on constantly. And many teachers know what I'm talking about. And people are going to say, well, when did this start? And who on earth ever did this? Why would a plan like that be allowed to be carried out?
That's right.
Well, then you have to go back to 1934, which I will do, and we have to go to the three-pronged fork, okay? So I do think that the watershed year, although you can go back to the early part of the century when the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation were deeply involved in education, and that it was decided then that Carnegie would deal with the international part and Rockefeller domestic. They commissioned the American Historical Association to put together a study of the social studies, and they came up with lots of volumes, but I have one little volume, Conclusions and Recommendations for the Social Studies. And basically that little one is an original book. I wish I brought it with me. Too bad. But I don't even dare let it out of the house. It's so important. It called for changing the United States through the schools from a free individualistic economy to a socialist, collectivized, planned economy in the New World Order.
It says that in the book.
Yes.
And that book was written when?
In 1934.
By who?
It was the Carnegie Corporation paid for it. The American Historical Association put it together. And
can people get that book in the library?
No.
No.
No, they can't. They were very instrumental in getting the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed, which, as I said before, changed education from knowledge, content-based, academic, to performance-based behavior. And from that time on, because that was necessary for what we're looking at now with school to work agenda is the planned economy is performance-based.
So they're training workers.
They're training
not thinkers, not leaders.
Exactly. At that time, you had a general, Buck Chisholm, a Canadian general psychiatrist, who was a very close friend of Alger Hiss's. And he gave a speech in 1945 to the World Health Organization, which basically recommended getting rid of the conscience.
Wow.
Yes. And he said we would do it through the schools. We would retrain the teachers to be little psychiatrists. He said it is an international system they're looking at. They're going to change the behavior of the children. They're going to change the teachers' training. They're going to do everything. He told them everything.
And they didn't believe him?
No, they just, well, you know what goes on.
Hello guys, David Vose here again. It's another beautiful day here. Some clouds in the sky, which is nice. It kind of keeps and blocks out the heat of the sun. Off and on as the clouds go by, and all the little birdies are just scratching out there, and they seem content. Maybe they won't make too much noise. No real wind going on, so perhaps we can really talk about something here today. Well, you just saw that clip, and I hope that most of you, well, I would hope that all of you would not have rolled your eyes and thought, who cares? I would say that, on the other hand, most of you should be absolutely shocked at what you just heard. More than shocked, like if you didn't know this was actually happening. Like, I know a lot of people, even family members, that I don't even think Jehovah's Witnesses, probably my family from, I haven't spoken to for years. I doubt whether they realize what's going on. If they do know what's going on and they are still sending their children to school, then it would be the most deplorable thing I could have ever imagined, that people would willingly do something evil to their children. Because I'm about to show you what the true intent of the school education system is, and the World Health Organization, which we've all experienced in the last several years, some of their doings. And it seems like only recently we've all, clamored about, oh my goodness, the WHO and because the Fauci and all that. But friends, you have no idea this is not what you think it is. It's not about health. It's about the destruction of the Christian church and the destroying of the minds of all of our children and the control and a world dictatorial state where they would control you and all of the human race by means of sort of a mesmerism, education, demoralization, and literally driving every man, woman, and child insane. This has been the program. And I think some of you would say, oh, yeah, I believe that's been going on. But only recently have you started to see this. Some of you that do see it. I remember I've been fighting this for a long time. I saw a lot of different things. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses themselves were a CIA plot, a MK Ultra mind control organization, just as many others. The Mormon Church, as it is today. I mean, modern Mormonism. Many of these churches aren't. A lot of times we think, well, the Christian church teaches Jesus, and you go to church, and people are very radically Christian, and they spank their children, and so I don't know what you mean, Dave. Not really. Most of these churches are places where you go to get some psychiatric push. Everyone is there, and no one in that church that you might go to, whether it's Baptist, Lutheran, whatever, Pentecostal, none of them will be telling you what I'm going to tell you today. They will, if you were to say, oh, my wife, they put her on medication, she's in a prison, they've strapped her down, it all started with California is like a prison psychiatric ward, and it's been that way for many years. It's sort of the high end of the experiment. And I don't know, it's probably like that in some states up in New England area. I don't know, which is the most liberal states up there. It seems like there are weird projects going on in the world, like they are doing a different sort of fanatical cultism in Texas or Florida, where it's all, yeah, we got to kill these people and put everybody in jail and blah, blah, blah. And that's their psychotic MK Ultra mind control. And then on the other side, you've got California or New York or wherever, or Maryland or wherever this liberalism is going in the East. Because I'm not sure which state is the most liberal, whatever, over there. But I know there's a big pocket of liberalism in the New England area. And there's a huge pocket of it in Oregon, Washington, California. So both coasts, probably because that's where all the big cities are. They can concentrate their efforts in these huge cities. But, for me, because I was born in California, my daughter was born in California, my father was born in California, I lived many years in California. I'm well aware of what's happened over the last several years. Now, when I was a child, I don't know that it was as prevalent as it is now. But I can tell you that it's been many years now that this thing's been going on in California where instead of taking people to prison for crimes, which is another plot that's going on in other, places in the United States where people are literally, the whole drug thing isn't all about you being on drugs and being addicted and dying, and it's also about making you sick so they can make profit off of you in the medical fields, experiment on you with drugs. But it's not just about that either. It's also about debilitating you emotionally so that you can't go out and have a life or a family, separating families, whether it's through religion, teachings, manipulations, school programs, which we're going to find out some crazy things here, but also by means of intimidation, police on the street flashing red and white, psychologically activating lights that flash and sirens, woo, woo, other intimidation tactics that they're just on every street all over America. It's beyond. I mean, we say martial law started, with President Abraham Lincoln to deal with the Civil War, and they've never revoked it. But people say stuff like that, and then we just move on. But it had to start somewhere. The birth certificate, the taking away of your rights by giving you other benefits, by luring you. Oh, well, if you'll just go and be a slave, we'll give you a little money. We'll give you a nice luxury prison to live in, right? You can never leave your little 15-minute city. You think 15-minute cities have just started? This is an idea that's been going on. It's called cities. And these 15-minute cities, while today we have this imagination that they're going to be these luxury places and all this amazing, satin sheets and people living it up and, their bar right down the street and your grocery market. But what we're really talking about is your poison feed, your just like a prison. You stay in a cell, that's your bed. There's sort of regimentation, certain time you all file down to a cafeteria, they give you a bunch of poison food. This is even going on at hospitals. They're feeding you this poison food when you're supposed to be sick and you should be getting like bone broth or vegetables or whatever, but no, they're feeding you Jello and pizza and little hamburgers or something, or lasagna or whatever they feed you in these places. The school lunch programs, all the same thing, feeding people poisons. Advertising, Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms and all this, cereal that is, the world hasn't even realized how bad the cereal and the things, and that's what, in the inner cities and most people, they never get bacon and eggs for breakfast. They don't even get pancakes. They just, nobody wants to make breakfast. Ain't nobody got time for that. So, because mom's got to go to work. So the kids just get up in the morning and get a bowl of this cereal, which is all sugar. Now that would be bad enough, right? The psychotic effects of that, especially not having mom there and, and having a meal with the family and stuff and association with family. But dad's already left for work. Mom's got a job too. The kids are pouring their own cereal. But beyond that, the breads, the cereals, and all these things that we're eating, nobody's talking about the formaldehyde and the preservatives that's in it. I mean, we talk about preservatives, but we don't realize what this means. It means that there is no bacterium, that this is a substance, not a food, that's in a cardboard box that is open in the cupboard for weeks. It stays in a factory for months, and then it's shipped places all around and in store, like big piles, stacks of these same cereals stacked in a corner somewhere and then there's a date on it when it's no longer good. And the only reason there is a date is because it starts tasting bitter, and it's, well, and stuff with like cereal. I mean, I don't even think people check any dates on that. It's like good for years. Bread sits on the shelf. So this is all formaldehyde, which will completely destroy your stomach. Now, it may not kill you. You eat a bowl of cereal, you feel fine. You think, oh, it's protein or whatever's in there. There's vitamins, it's fortified. We got milk. But none of this stuff that these children are eating has any natural bacteria. And the reason they're fortifying it is because when this flour is made in the factory, it's stripped of all nutrients. It's bleached. You know what that means? It's bleaching means it's stripped of the color, the nutrients, everything about white flour is a non-substance. There's no food value whatsoever. It's just a powder, like white sugar is. It's bleached, right? Real sugar comes from cane or beets or something, and it's got color. And molasses is what it starts off. But then when you get it, it's just white little granules of just chemicals, just one chemical, sucrose or something. And it's dangerous. It strips your body of all of the bacteria. And this is what they're telling us is autoimmune deficiency and so forth. But what it is a lack of nutrition. But aside from all of the plan to physically poison the children and the families and the people, there's all these other programs going on simultaneously to keep the families apart. Jehovah's Witnesses have a policy, and it's not like they're not aware. Like, well, just some dumb Christians don't know what they're doing. No, the governing body, Hinchel and Gnor and Frederick Franz and these people that run the organization from Bavaria that wear Masonic rings on their hand visibly to this day. Sometime in the, I don't know, like a lot of people think this all came from Russell. It didn't come from Charles Taze Russell. He may have actually been a good man. At that time in 1860s, there was a lot of Masons that believed in the values of Mary Magdalene and the Knights of St. John, the actual truth. But it was infiltrated. So Judge Rutherford, being a judge, was sent in. I don't know if he murdered Charles Russell, but it's interesting that Charles Russell died on Halloween night in a graveyard wearing a Roman toga. There's some ritual going on. But the guy that takes over is a Judge Rutherford, changed the whole organization. And at some point, gradually, they changed all of this and made a black mass that people... I wonder if you guys even grasp the fact that there are millions of people in a Masonic hall. That's what they call it. They're not churches. Oh, buddy, no. We ain't no Christian. We're Jehovah's Witnesses, right? That's what they say. Oh, we don't believe in life after death. You're going to die and go into oblivion. Oh, you don't get salvation. You'll never get salvation. Only the anointed, only us, the elite. And we've got a new Bible for you that takes out the deity of Christ, and it's called the New World Order. And we're waiting for the New World Order. They keep talking about this. And it's the Black Mass, where everybody comes on this day that Christ was hung on a cross, crucified, and observe this thing that they call the memorial. And they memorialize his death, not his life, his teachings, or his anything. But they memorialize his death. They call it a celebration. And what they do is they pass around the body and blood of Christ, which is the wine and the bread. And all of their followers are told to not partake of it because they are not going to have eternal life with Christ. They publicly reject the body and blood of Christ. And that is by definition called the Black Mass. So they did that, and then this policy of disfellowshipping people, young people, old people, just control, and what it does is it's a mind-altering doctrine. It drives families insane. I've seen so many Jehovah's Witness mothers that go absolutely psychiatric insane. They get on medications. They don't say anything bad about medications. Why? Jehovah's Witnesses are perfectly fine with that. So are the Mormons. They were hosting the thingy during a specific time you guys might remember in their church buildings, facilitating it. The Mormons were, and Jehovah's Witnesses as well, and sending out letters telling the elders they had to get the thing and encourage the rest of the congregation and almost insist and intimidate them to do it. And demand and the policies, which is politics, right? And they say they don't believe in politics. Jehovah's Witnesses have these policies, which is you've got to have secret meetings, executing spiritual executions, breaking up the family, intimidation, control. Oh, you're not wearing your sideburns the right, place, or your hair's too long, or so in the street it's rock and roll and craziness and liberalization and leave your family and get on LSD. But in the churches, it's you're an evil sinner and you're going to hell and we will never talk to you again because how dare you be a transgender? Well, they become transgenders because society on one hand makes them that way, indoctrinates them that way, and gets them addicted on drugs, offers them the drugs. And then the other hand, the other part of government will arrest you and accuse you and destroy you. They lure you into the sin and then they execute you. It's the tempter and the avenger. Satan is both. He tempts you, he lures you, he tries you, and if you fail, you're executed. And since the law is a bondage and a curse, we're all cursed. And cursed is anyone who is hanged upon a tree, as the Bible says. And so we're all going to be hung upon that cross, the cross of this existence, and tried and tested by Satan. Now, a lot of you will say, "Oh, well, then this is crazy. It's the Lord's fault. He's allowed this. He's actually promoting it." No, not really. You see, the test did come from the Lord, and that is, okay, in order to become like deity, you've got to decide between good and evil. You have to make the choice. You have to be your own, you have to have free will. You have to be your own arbitrator. You have to know for thyself, and know thyself, O man. So in Eve, our mother, initiated us into this maze of the knowledge of good and evil in order to become like deity. So that part was allowed by the Lord because it was absolutely necessary. He couldn't interfere with our own free will. We had to learn for ourselves. The problem is this is when the lower ego comes in and begins to desire and lust the wrong, which is where we're supposed to overcome the lower nature with love and goodness. But as time went on, certain wicked men, for power and greed, learned this principle that people are lured and they began to use it to control the world. And so on Mount Sinai, we were all there and we were offered the light. It's a symbol. Everyone can see the light. It's always there with you. The Lord never rejects his grace. The Lord never allowed any of this evil in the world. You literally do not have to suffer and die. You say, well, when has anyone ever lived forever, Dave? Well, when have you ever seen anyone break free of this mind control? All you get is wake up. All you get is believe. That's the Bible has been telling us for 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Just believe in his love and his grace. Saying that mountain be moved and it shall. Stop allowing into your temple, this body, this defiled blasphemy. This is, I am God. Who is that? The flesh? It's not. The circumstances are not God. I am love. I am truth. I am the way. I am happy. I am well. But we keep saying we're not well. We keep cursing people with these thoughts and these ideas and these control methods. You see, yes, in order to have an overcomer, you have to have overcoming. And in order to have overcoming, you have to allow the possibility of people being deceived and making their own decisions, and all the while never being allowed, never does the Lord in heaven allow for anyone on this earth to have control over you. You always are making that choice. You choose to believe them, you choose to live in their society, eat their poison, and be mentally, once you get on the road, then you're subject to their laws because they built the road. It's kind of like maritime law. This is why when you go to a court, it's like you go through a little gate and you go into this little quarters. And once you pass this barrier, you're like standing on their boat, right? And maritime law is different than, like, it's not part of the physical world. You're not subject. You have no rights, no freedoms. They can court-martial you, make you walk the plank. They got any rule they want because you entered onto their boat. So in the same sense, if you participate in this world and you get your driver's license, you drive down the road, now you're subject to their laws. If you don't turn your signal on, you have your seatbelt or your helmet, or stop at the stop sign when they say and how they say it, or go the speed limit, or whatever it is that they want you to do, then they simply arrest you. They have the authority. Why? Not because they have any authority, and to this day they don't. The angels won't let them. Only authority that government has is the authority you give them. Now, as a country, we've given them all this authority and all this evil. We allowed the WHO to publicly do all of this. We know what they're doing. We're in California, the little children being taken from their parents, and the parents are like, okay, take my kids. They're crazy. And at first, it's like we strongly recommend that your child's crazy. Look, he's throwing things. He's running away. So I think maybe you're endangering your child. Just all these weird things that would never happen if you'd get out of the city, unenroll your child from their school system, which is the propaganda and the evil. Stop paying taxes and living under their rules, under their little HOAs or whatever, where you're under their rule. You can't have a flag on your porch because you're in an HOA. This is the thing. You're living in their city. Now there's city laws, bylaws, state laws. But they can't do any of that, technically. There's always got to be somewhere in the world that you can go be free. There's always got to be somewhere, because they're not allowed to forcefully do any of this. You agree to every bit of it. Nobody can go to prison if they don't have a birth certificate and a driver's license and they're not in the city buying and selling. But if you're living in the woods and living in areas where it is not controlled by some law, which there has to always be a place for you to go, then they have no authority, no jurisdiction. The only jurisdiction they have is they started off with their boat on the sea, and then they purchased some land. Now they own that land. And now the government purchased the Louisiana Purchase and the Missouri and all this. And so now this land has been purchased and it's owned by the government, not even by the taxpayer. It's owned by the government, because you cannot fish. If you really are the owner of this, if the people, then they wouldn't have to get a permit to fish, to hunt, to live, to breathe, to catch rainwater, to plant a garden, to go get a permit to build you a cabin or defecate on the ground. You've got to get permission, because that land they own, the state owns it. You must get out of the world, friends. Now I get it. It is now 2025. They practically own everything, at least in most areas, right? But there are still places where there aren't any, like, it's not required that you have a permit and you can build anything you want. Like where I'm at, you don't need a permit to build. And until recently, they had no jurisdiction. The other day, they came out here and said I only can have 5 dogs. And I can only have 4 dogs, and I had 5. And they said they were going to give me a ticket. And I said, no, you can't. You have no jurisdiction. They said, oh, well, it's from the city of Grants. I said, the city of Grants is 65 miles away. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. I own this land. I said, now you need to leave my property. I'm not under your jurisdiction. This is a ranch, a farm. I have coyotes coming trying to steal my chickens. I can have as many chickens or dogs or rabbits or anything I want. You can't just form some legislation in this little town called Grants and incorporate me. I didn't vote in for this. And we argued for a while, and they left me alone. And they've never come back. But this is recently that they're trying to intimidate people. I've been watching videos where the other day it just saddened me to no end, where I watched this poor man and woman, very young, beautiful couple with 2 babies, parked in a campsite somewhere, I don't even know where, and some fish and game or ranger or something pulled up and asked the man his name, and he said David. And they said, what's your last name? He said, I'll be happy to get my license for you. And they said, I told you to give me your name. He says, listen, I am. I'll go over there to my van and get you my driver's license. That's all it was said. And the lady said, no, for my safety, I don't want you going near it. I just want you to tell me your last name. And the guy looked at her, and before he was even allowed to say anything or do anything more, she grabbed him, handcuffed him, put him in the car, and then went and demanded that the woman that was in the car give a driver's license, which she didn't have. And because she didn't have it, they said they were going to arrest her if she didn't give her original birth name, which she told them and explained to them that they were sovereign citizens. The woman, the man had the license. He was the driver. But she was a sovereign citizen and had given up her driver's license and her birth certificate and everything years ago. And they insisted that she give them her original name and social security number. She didn't remember her social security number or something, or maybe she didn't want to give it to him. And they threatened, they said, okay, we're going to take you and him to jail because you won't give us your last name. And we're taking your children to foster care. And they're going to be adopted. You'll never see them again. They finally got this woman to cough up her last name that she was born with. And they allowed her to stay with the children. And they arrested the man for absolutely nothing. Because he was even willing to give them his last name. He kept saying, listen, my name is, but he says, too late. You've obstructed. So this is what's going on, the fishing game. It happened to me. They got a law like your dog has to be on a leash if you're on fish and game land or government land, any government land. So you're out in the middle of nowhere hiking with your dog, like I do all the time. And if a game warden or fish and game somebody comes along and you don't have your dog on a leash, then it's then they have the right, I guess, to get your name and social security number and send you a ticket for $300. The second time, in other words, it's a way that they monitor and keep people off the land, so you can't camp. They harass you with all these little laws and ideas in the middle of nowhere. They're intimidating everywhere, demanding. I was on fishing game land in Alabama, and I wasn't fishing. I had some stuff in the back of my truck that I was transporting, and I had this cooler in the back of my truck. And the fish and game demanded that I let him search my truck to see if I had fish in there. And I could have stood my ground, but I just didn't have time for that. So I said, you know what? Fine. Open it and look in there. But then I proceeded to witness to him and tell him that if he did not stop harassing and beating his fellow brother, that Christ was coming soon and he would face the Pied Piper. And they both looked real sheepish and saw there was no fish in there and turned around and left. Well, they violated my rights, and this is why. Because they're intimidating us. They want control. You can't fish, you can't hunt, you can't camp, you can't do anything. So you must have some place where you can legally park to get through the coming days, friends. But going back to when I was young, these Jehovah's Witnesses, these policies of separating the family, coercing and manipulating the mind to believe that this is the right way. Instead of partaking of the body and blood of Christ, we reject it. Instead of honoring the family and forgiving, they'd never forgive up to 10 years. If you're begging and sitting at the back of the hall with your head down, repenting to them, not to the Lord. They have to see fruits befitting repentance. It could be at least a year or up to 10 years that you've got to grovel and beg. And most people can't do it. So this is why 100,000 people a year for years was disfellowshipped. And many of them became disillusioned and suicidal and recluses. And this is one program. California is a much bigger program. All across the United States and the world, they're putting drugs on the streets. They claim they got border issues. They're making the policies, bringing in the fentanyl and all the drugs, destroying the children's minds. And then school policies. Yes, this was a school policy. Bill Gates, his father, was on the board of family planning, which actively supports, what happens with these little babies. They're just murdered. I could tell you stories about this that would probably get me kicked off of YouTube, so I'm not going to do that. But bloody, evil, wicked, ritual, satanic plots. Child protective organizations are run by the satanic covens. You have no idea what's going on. And so I'm going to read this little thing here of a few quotes of what these people and their intent and what it is. And remember, this is all coming from World War II. It's all starting in 1945 during the war. It's a world program of dictatorial Nazi, MK mind-altering CIA, KGB propaganda to destroy the family, the mind, the body, and the soul. And here's how it goes. When a city or society is confronted with riots resulting in violence, destruction, and death of its citizens, it's not surprising when law-abiding citizens ask, how could this happen? Or why are people so violent? Or what is wrong with the youth today? All sorts of explanations, justifications, and unusual solutions are advanced, but they rarely provide the answers or uncover the root causes of the problem. To gain a broader understanding, we must look at quite different long-term factor that has been insidious cause of deterioration in social and family standards and conditions. In the 1940s, psychiatry's leader proclaimed their intention to infiltrate the field of education and the law and bring about the reinterpretation and eventually the eradication of the concept of right and wrong. Now that is a quote from this Brock Chisholm, that the woman that we saw at the beginning of with that in that clip, she says that he gave a speech in 1945 to the WHO, the World Health Organization. And he was the head of the World Health Organization. And he presented what their plan was. So if you want to know what the thingy was, it has to do with the destruction of the family, sterilization policies, and illness policies. And you can go back and find some of these videos that talk about they're getting rid of the God genes, what they call it. And they'll do it through psychiatry and intimidation and MK mind altering control and worldwide propaganda and intimidation with police, drugs, medical, pharmaceutical, and churches, and television and movies and pornography and insanity. And so this Brock Chisholm, a Canadian, and the British psychiatrist John Rawlings, Rees, they co-founded the World Federation for Mental Health, bluntly told their peers at the time, if the race is to be freed from the crippling burden of good and evil. Now, understand, yes, we have to be confronted with good and evil. And we have to learn to choose good to become like deity. What they're talking about is the eradication of your choice. You're not allowed to decide what is good and what is evil for yourself. You'll be under law or under some drooling drug or out of your mind or with some lobotomy or a straitjacket. But you'll have no choices. And it also means that they don't believe that their evil is evil. They don't believe in good and evil. And there won't be any choice because they don't believe in it. And even Jordan Peterson keeps using this term. The only thing that they're teaching these modern people in colleges and universities is utility. So there's nothing about right or wrong. Should I do this? Is it right or is it wrong? They don't teach that. They refuse to say those things in colleges. They're teaching, Karl Marx and Nietzsche and all these other crazy, Hegel and all these evil, wicked things, Darwin and Freud. And they teach them that if you want to decide to do something or not, it's based on the utility. So in other words, if we murder a bunch of people and take away their rights, it is okay because it's neither good nor evil. It serves the purpose of population control, therefore it's a utility. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they want to free the world of this burden of good and evil. That's the purpose of the World Health Organization. So what do you think the thingy may have had to do with that? Governments were not to, well, for one thing, that they intimidate you and get you to think and believe worldwide now it's normal that the government has this power over your own physical body and what you can put into your body. But you notice that they never did. Even with all that intimidation, tried to convince us that we had to do it or we'd lose our job or whatever. Guess what? We should quit our jobs. We should quit this society. Like I said, you get on their boat, you're under their maritime law. You get in their cities, you're under their laws. You want to buy and sell, you must get the mark of the beast. But if you don't abide by their system and you make a garden and a farm and you live apart and you train your own children, you don't get the, all the benefits and the perks and retire on a pension from some government job, then you're free. But if you willfully join the system, and I don't mean you could never have had a social security number or a birthday, but if you got one, who cares? You don't need to get rid of it. If you paid in all these years and worked, it's not like it's illegal to get that money back out. It's called Social Security income. That's a right that you have. It's like an insurance program. There's nothing wrong with that per se. But it's all the other little benefits that they're luring you into so that you will eventually get the mark of the beast because you want to buy or sell, because you want to participate, because you want to be in society. You got to leave Babylon in order not to partake of her sins and her plagues. So the new ideologies and ideas of the new psychology as society recovered from the devastation of war, the attempt to undermine morals and consequently the deterioration of society and the family unit through Jehovah's Witnesses, through family planning, taking the minorities, putting them in the inner cities, stacking up in these filthy slums with down at the end of the road a barred little grocery market that only sells alcohol and cigarettes and sugar cereal for your kids and booze. And you take your welfare check and you go down there and you get all your drugs and alcohol and your poison. And then down at the other corner behind the market, you're getting your fentanyl from the local government sanctioned drug dealers. And then you go crazy, and then you're taken to the mental wards, the hospitals, the pharmaceutical. It's all interrelated because now if you go to the doctor, a lot of times they'll say your illness is mental, it's stress, which could be also related to the food you're eating and the society you're living in, and the fact that you just witnessed your father go to prison and your mother being raped in the floor. But then they will, instead of saying you're in trauma and society is bad and they need to stop this and teach wholesomeness and love and family values, no, they keep doing it. And so therefore they say, okay, now you're psychotic, you're having psychosis moments, you're bipolar, you're this, you're that, here's your drugs, and this is your salvation. Just go in there. We don't want to have to tie you down again, man, for 72 hours hold, on a 55-50 or 50 at 150 or whatever they call it, and force you and strap you down and give you Haldol so that you'll go over in the corner and drool for about 3 months until you learn your lesson. You don't ever cross us again, right? And if we have to, if you really, really don't comply, then we'll put you on a permanent injected drug that will give you a lobotomy and you'll never come out of it. And the parents sanction it and say, hey, take my kids. They're crazy. Why? Because you don't love your kids. You don't go and save them. You don't believe in them. You don't love them. They're a burden on you. You're too busy drinking your alcohol and going to work and trying to get ahead so you can have some crazy satin sheets in your prison cell and eat this crazy evil poisons that makes you happy. Your Ben and Jerry's ice cream that's just full of high fructose corn syrup and your salty, preserved, burned potato chips that weren't no good as potatoes to start with because it's starchy, and now it's been, destroyed. It's nothing but absolute poison. And sit there and watch your violent whodunit movies and your porn, and you're fine. You don't care about your family. Your religion promotes this. Oh, well, they're bad. They're of the devil. Why, they've done something wrong. Throw them out. No compassion. This is evil. This is being taught. And, I talk about Jehovah's Witnesses all the time because I was raised in that organization and disfellowshipped. They coerced me to get baptized when I was 17 and a half. And then when I got 18, they disfellowshipped me. That was the only reason that they did that, because of what I knew, because I saw what they did when my dad grew the beard and the whole fiasco and how they destroyed my mother and destroyed my whole family. So they wanted me out of there. So they lured me in to do that. But it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. I've been thrown out of other churches as well, and some Protestant churches, they'll do the same thing. So I was, when I was in Texas, I was living in a little town, and years ago, I just thought, well, I'll go down to the local, I think it was like a Church of God or something. It was, or some kind of a, ordinary, looked like a Baptist kind of thing, and you go in and sit there in the pew and listen to the pastor. And on Wednesdays, they'd get in the area in the back where they had tables where they would eat, like a get-together area, and they would sit around the tables like a book study and talk. And I went to about 2 of those meetings and just, shared publicly the Lord Jesus and how, they would have a study and ask a question. I'd raise my hand and give a good answer or whatever. But I don't know what happened, but the Sunday after that, I went and everybody was in the parking lot. All the cars were there, and you could see, it was big windows. You could see all the people milling around, shaking each other's hands and chatting and getting ready for the sermon that Sunday. So I come up and I saw the whole group of individuals milling around, and they look out the window and they saw me coming. And I saw one of them go over there to the door and lock it. And I thought, well, he must have just, I don't know. He surely didn't lock the door. So I go over to the big doors and try to open it to go in, and it was locked. And they just stood there and looked at me. And at first I thought it was a mistake. So I kind of looked at them, and I'm like, the door's locked. And they just looked at me and didn't have any expression. And they just waited till I turned around and left. And that hurt me too, because it was crazy, because they don't even have a policy of disfellowshipping or whatever. They just locked me out of these services and didn't want me to come back, evidently. So I just never went back. And I was also thrown out of early when I was about probably 23 years old or something like this. There was a group of people that were like ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that were, I think they called themselves ex-Jehovah's Witnesses or something, and they would have these big conventions all over the country. And the guy that ran the whole place asked me to give a major public talk at the next convention. So I gave this big public talk about how whatever we ask, we shall receive. We can tell that mountain to be moved, and with faith, all things are possible. And they all publicly, the entire place, said I was wrong. And then the following week, I went to the local gathering, and they literally threw me out because I didn't agree with what they agreed with. So when I got up and left, I said, well, this is crazy. You people left an organization because of these policies, and here you are recreating the entire ridiculousness, a lack of love. This is not Christ-like, and I'm ashamed of all of you, and I walked out. So I've been thrown out of at least 3 different organizations in my life. So it's prevalent everywhere. And like we started talking about, even in the churches where maybe they teach Jesus, but they're not saying, hey, this society, this world is evil, we got to get out. They're saying, no, send your kids to school. Why, you're a terrible parent. If the social services said your kids got to go, then we support that. Yeah, the churches support, the World Council of Churches support your rights being deteriorated and you being intimidated. And they believe in the police and they believe in the doctors and they will encourage you, go get the thing. So in its formative years, the WFMH conferences were held in London, 1940 and 1945, where the leaders eagerly laid out their goals and objectives, and Reese proclaimed, we can therefore justifiably stress our particular point of view with regard to the proper development of the human psyche, even though our knowledge be incomplete, even though we don't know anything, we must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. Every educational activity, religion, television, pharmaceutical drugs, everything. The books, the entertainment, the music. Must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. We have made a useful attack We have made a useful attack. This is a war. They're attacking. What are they attacking? Upon the number of professions. The two easiest of them naturally are the teaching profession and the church. This is their method of attack. They're going to attack the church and the education system. The two most difficult are law and medicine. That was Dr. John Rawlings Rees, 1940. The Canadian psychiatrist G. Brock Chisholm, president of the FMH in 1945 during the Nazi war, which was really a ruse because it was just like today. They're just manipulating and making us believe that the little rocket man's going to blow off a rocket any minute if we don't give him more taxes. So he says, the reinterpretation and eventually eradication of the concept of right and wrong, which has been the basis of child training, the substitution of intelligent and rational thinking for faith, are the belated objectives of practically all effective psychiatry and psychotherapy. Do you understand that? You Christians, you people that are willingly going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or on these medical psych drugs, you are literally giving them your soul, and they are literally trying to eradicate from your being your own free will, your own rights as a human being, and your belief in the Lord Jesus and love and family and values. And if you willingly, after knowing this, continue to do it, I know some of you will say, well, if I get off my meds, I'll go psycho. Only because you have no hope. Only because nobody cares. And you think you have no hope, and you didn't know that the Lord loves you and that life is still good and that you have a purpose to tell everyone else the truth. And yes, you may suffer at first because you're in a battle trying to defeat this negative, this defilement that's in your temple, these negative thoughts that they put in there, your defeatism and your self-hate. But if you can believe in the Lord and the power of this divine mind and love yourself, you won't need these medical straitjackets that keep you in a sleep. Of course, you're not going to be violent or have psychotic issues when you have a lobotomy from the drugs. But if that's the way you want to live, well, I can't, because if I don't take my meds, I'll go off my rocker and run around and scream and do bad things. No, that's only because you were that's a behavioral problem. You were only behaving that way because you thought that they were bad and you had no way to defeat them, and they were against you, and they said you're no good, and you knew inside yourself that you were good, and you were mad, and you were jealous, and you're angry. But now that you know that you shouldn't be jealous and angry, you should have compassion for these idiots and teach them the gospel and be strong. And you know now that their lies about your mental health, there's nothing wrong with it. It's called the lies that they're telling you. That's what's causing you to be this way. Immediately you get rid of these lies and accept the truth and the love of the truth, that you might be delivered from this wrath that's coming, that's here, then you'll be fine. Now, I'm not going to go into another hour and speech on that. We do this all the time here on this channel. Watch some of my other videos. Watch the video I did yesterday. Friends, I am so sad that the video that I did yesterday, which is so important and so educational and so vital for people to understand, and yet very few people will even go watch it. Unless I put the word Trump in the video title and a picture of Trump on the thumbnail, you won't even watch it. Unless your idol is on the cover, Mariah Carey or Lady Gaga, you don't want to listen to it. Unless Trump is saying it, you don't believe it. Or Tucker Carlson, or like I said, even Jordan Peterson. I like, he's brilliant, but he's talking about utilities, not about right and wrong. The debate about whether Christ is real and all stuff, there's probably some psychological twist going on to basically get you to say, yeah, okay, we have the right to be a Christian, but hey, can't say it's true. can't make a declaration of faith because no one can know. Yes, you can. Go into your inner room and find a testimony. The Lord says, if you seek, you'll find. But Jordan Peterson says, you can't find. You can't know. But it's a good institution to teach the children that they should have family values. Yeah, okay. So it gets the children to start thinking, okay, well, maybe it's nice. Christianity, it's a little belief. Yeah, makes people happy. It's a little paradigm, makes them happy. But what that's really doing is not full-blown making atheists right off the bat, but agnostics that will later be educated and told, hey, go to college, hey, we got to do that too. And once you go to college, they'll finish you off with the atheism and the Marxism and the Nietzscheism and the Freudism and the Fauciism. The reinterpretation of the concept of right and wrong, which has been the basis of child training, the substitution of intelligent and rational thinking for faith in place of faith, are the belated objectives of the practically all effective psychotherapies. The fact is, the most psychiatrists and psychologists and other respectable people, have escaped from these moral chains and are able to observe and think freely. Brock Chisholm, 1945, the founder of the World Health Organization and the director from 1948. A year later, Chisholm wrote again about the eradication of right and wrong conduct. The pretense is made, as it has been made, in relation to the finding of any extension of truth, that to do away with right and wrong would produce uncivilized people, immorality, lawlessness, and social chaos. The fact is that most psychiatrists and psychologists, the ones you're going to and getting your counseling from, the devil, you're going to the devil and he's counseling you. Oh yeah, give up your soul, son. There's no right and wrong, right? We've got to get rid of all this evil of having love in your heart. You can't have that. There's no right or wrong. It's just a utility. We've got to murder everybody. There's too much of a population. But we got to think freely. These were not empty statements at the time, but the verbalization of a long-term goal and the strategy, and laid the foundation for the educational and social modalities that have since become deeply rooted in our society and which directly affect us today. Yeah, people don't even give a flying leap. They don't realize the homelessness is not the problem. It's pretty bad, but the fact that these people are wandering around on drugs and are being manipulated and offered handouts to do the evil deeds and sell the drugs to get more people into this zombieism is the problem. Most of these people are down to the point where they don't even know who they are anymore, and they're willing robots for the World Health Organization. They're all on mental drugs, and they're all getting Social Security checks, which is to pay them off until they can destroy the rest of the people in California, and then to the rest of the world. But of course, the other states are being destroyed by other ideas, like, hey, let's make America great again and start putting everybody in prison and make more police on the streets, right? More control and fish a game and control. And you can't camp there and you can't do this, can't go fishing. We've got to have more taxes and all of this. So this is the undermining tradition, concepts of morals, and the eradication of right and wrong. And it's gradually and deviously found their way into our education and social system over the last 60 years. Here is a statement, quote, "The family is now one of the major obstacles to improved mental health, and hence should be weakened if possible." This is what the transgender movement was about, friends. Weakening the family and the moral fiber and the mental, clarity of what is. I was watching Jordan Peterson the other day, another video where he's talking about what the is. Remember, Bill Clinton said, I don't know, it depends on what you mean by is. Did you or did you not have sex with that woman? Well, it depends on what you mean by did I. So they want to be free individuals. If they want to be a girl, but they're really a boy, that's their individual right, right? They want to have sex with animals or corpses or put horns in their head or all this. It's encouraged in school at the age of 3 to free the individuals, especially the children, from the coercion of family life. Family life is a coercion, but they offer these children, these satanic organizations, they offer them everything to try and get them to run away at the age of 15. They've now made it a law that if a child's like 15 and they run away, well, they have a right to, I guess, run away. But what actually happens is they take them to a coven. It's called a foster home, which is a big house with all these little kids running around doing drugs and having sex and doing ritual satanic orgies and stuff. I know, and you don't believe me? Yeah. They're actively taking children away from you. If they can't do it when you're little because they've got you on drugs, they do that on purpose to take your kids, to separate the family and indoctrinate them. They'll do it when your kids are 15. So don't let them go to high school, friends. Don't let your child go to any school, because by the time they're to high school, you'll never see your kid again. To achieve the world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions. That's what the witnesses are doing, actively destroying the family. National patriotism and religious dogmas. So you've got to get rid of the idea that you love the Constitution and freedom and that you have a certain religious belief or something. Few legislators who pass these mental health laws realize that Brock Chisholm and his associates define mental illness as a sense of loyalty to a particular nation, a sense of loyalty to a moral code, and strict adherence to concepts of right and wrong. Chisholm has been obsessed for years with the idea that instilling concepts of right and wrong, love of country, and morality in children by their parents is a paramount evil. See, that beautiful couple that was camping with 2 babies, they were trying to get them to go off and go crazy and start talking back, but they wouldn't do it. They were believers in Christ, and they did not use violence, but just more or less resisted and gave up their driver's license, that kind of thing, was peaceful resistance. So they couldn't provoke them into some craziness so that they could take them to some mental institution and then take their children. But they narrowly escaped. And the last I heard, because I was watching that video about this couple, is that since they couldn't get them that day, they've got warrants out for both of their arrests now, because the dog wasn't on a leash, and that's why they gave them a little ticket. And because they didn't pay the ticket, they now have warrants for their arrest, and this time they're gonna take their children. This is going on right here in America, friends. I don't know, but if you don't know this, you need to open your eyes. Education should aim at destroying free will so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmaster would have wished. The social psychologists of the future will have a number of classes of school children on whom they will try a different method of producing an unshakable conviction that snow is black. Various results will soon be arrived at. First, that influences of the home are obstructive, and verses set to music and repeatedly intoned are very effective, right? If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. They started this back in the day, what is it? Remember old Garth Brooks? I mean, who could be mad at him, right? He's a wholesome country singer, singing about good old country stuff. Do you know that I think it was like his number 1 song was about an older woman in her 40s having sex with an underage teen, like I think 16 or 17 years old in the song. And no one ever said anything. I mean, literally, if it was turned around, it was a man having sex with a 16-year-old little girl. Garth Brooks would have probably been arrested. But that song to this day is still being played on the radio, and everybody's just listening, and it's like, all these lyrics just going on around and around and around, psychedelic music, and I hate everything. The world is crazy. Let's take drugs and just drum out and, you know, yeah, that's what so many of you think is great, like Metallica music or bashing your guitar and holding up the devil sign. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's do it. It's psychosis that you're involved in, and you need to wake up, friends. And if you don't, you're going to partake of the plagues that's coming. And they're already here, and you're already partaking of them because you're depressed and you're sick and you're unhappy and you're dying. So it is for the future scientists to make these maxims precise and discover exactly how much it costs per head to make children believe that snow is black, or that men are women, and some other crazy thing. When the technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for more than one generation will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen. You see, you sit and you wonder, how could this be? What kind of crazy liberals would be promoting transgenderism and operations on kids in grammar school, and schools publicly backing it? We're constantly having school shootings and nobody knows why, and this debate over why people shouldn't have, GUNs, and why we should even be free. And now Jordan Peterson's sitting in a room where everybody's like, oh, I love this man. And he's saying, look, I don't know if I really believe Jesus existed, but it doesn't matter. I'm still a Christian. And just this apparent push to go back to Christianity, which is just a ploy, because there's people like, I don't know, there's some guy that goes to universities and debates, another guy other than Jordan Peterson, that debates the kids on Christianity, and he seems to be very good and Christian-like, but yet think about the fact that this same man will always apologize. Say, oh, of course, I don't believe in not going to the doctor or getting your mental health checkups or your thingy or they don't want to push any lines and get people to think that there's anything wrong with the world. They've all forgotten about the thingy. And they act like, oh, it could never happen again. We're all becoming enlightened now. And what's really happening is we're going in now in another direction where we're all going to be demanding law and order and more police and prisons and Guantanamo Bays and some kind of patriotism where we are hiling the and making walls like the wall of China, and we won't be able to leave, and being controlled by AI. They're telling us openly it's going to kill us. Who was that guy that just came out? Oh, I think it was that guy that's always debating Jordan Peterson. The Jordan Peterson would always take the religious side, and the other guy, I forget his name, this great philosopher, would debate against the idea of God and stuff. Well, now he's saying that AI is going to murder every man, woman, and child, and there's nothing you can do about it. And he's saying that they know about it, and this is why they're doing it. AI is literally the Antichrist. That's his words. I don't remember his name, but you can look him up. The guy that's always debating Jordan Peterson back in the day. So they're doing these programs of crazy, like, shock. Like, what? You mean the government has the right to tell you to do stuff with your own body that... No, they don't. And they never did demand or force you. They just said, oh, if you don't do this, we'll intimidate you. Friends, stand strong. Education does not mean teaching people to know what they do not know. It means teaching them to behave as they do not behave. The educational system should be a sieve through which all the children of a country are passed. It is highly desirable that no child escape inspection. That's why they try to force you and intimidate you to send your kids to school, and they say that they'll even arrest you, but the truth is they can't. And especially if you get out of the cities and you have a garden where you don't have to go buy and sell, and you're on your own property, they have no jurisdiction. Despite rapid progress in the right direction, the program of the average elementary school has been primarily devoted to teaching the fundamental subjects, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and closely related disciplines. Artificial exercises like drills on phonetics, multiplication tables, and formal writing movements are used to wasteful degree. Subjects such as arithmetic, language, and history include content that is intrinsically of little value. Nearly every subject is enlarged unwisely to satisfy the academic idea of thoroughness. Elimination of the unessential by scientific study then is one step in improving the curriculum. A student attains higher order thinking when he no longer believes in right or wrong. A large part of what we call good teaching is a teacher's ability to obtain effective objectiveness by challenging the student's fixed beliefs. A large part of what we call teaching is that the teacher should be able to use education to reorganize a child's thoughts, attitudes, and feelings. These are psychologists. Men are built, not born. Give me a baby and I'll make it climb and use its hands in constructing buildings in stone or wood. I'll make it a thief, a gunman, or a dope fiend. The possibilities of shaping in any direction are almost endless. John B. Watson, psychologist, founder of behaviorism. So, we could read this, but you need to look in and go find the speech of this Chisholm guy that this woman was talking about and find out what the WHO is really about and find out what the CIA is really doing and the FBI run by the Mormons is really doing and why they're having a black mass with the witnesses and separating families and teaching this anti-divineness of Christ and all of this drugs and transgenderism in the world and pharmaceutical drugs and mental illnesses that they just made up. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. The Lord loves you guys. Believe in Him, trust in Him. Stop thinking negative thoughts. Start having your faith and seeking and believing and trusting and practicing love. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.